This is PNE Pod, the official podcast of the one and only Preston North End Football Club. And you might be able to tell, with a bit of the background noise, we're on the road today, Mels. We're somewhere a little bit different, aren't we?
Yes, somewhere slightly different, but we are meeting a very, very special guest today.
It's worth it. We've come to a pub. It is 10
We've not
o'clock
had a
in the
bevy-
morning.
we've not had a
It's
bevy
10
yet.
Well, no one knows that listening. It could be
No.
10 p.m, it could be 10 o'clock in the morning. No, it is 10 a.m. and we've come to Lytham to meet a legend of Preston North End,
Yeah.
a legend as a manager and as a player.
Yeah, unique, definitely a legend, like you say, because of the success he had as a player and a manager. And Preston have won the title twice in 50 years. And he was at the football club for both of those, once as a player and once as a manager. And that is so unique, the success, great success he had at North End.
And he's gone on post North End to manage some of the biggest clubs, not just in the country, but in world football. He's won European trophies. We say he's a legend of Preston. He's a legend of the game, really, isn't he?
Yeah, a legend of the game. And what's nice is his association to North End. You know, there's been a lot of big names that have perhaps been at the football club, but because of what he gave the football club, and he's still in the game, had great success since leaving Preston, and the fact he still loves being around the football club is great.
I think the PNE fans have probably already guessed who we're about to speak to. But some of the things he told us were fascinating, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. He was really honest, told us about what it was like as a player, what Preston North End was like in sort of the mid-90s to the football club it was when he left. Big changes happened on and off the pitch.
Okay, well, let's not waste any more time. Even though we are in the pub, we need to get stuck into the conversation. Here is David Moyes. We've come to meet a PNE legend as a manager and as a player, David Moyes.
How you doing? Good to see you all.
Very good to be
Is
here.
it David? Is it Moisey? Davey? What
It's always been Moisey, really. But I think probably the role I've been in, a lot of people call me David now. Davey in Scotland, probably. So been called all sorts of things. But I think people would know me probably from Preston more as Moisey.
I was going to say, as a former Liverpool player, allowed to call you Moisey? Does that wash?
Yeah, it was a press man done it in the interview room probably a few weeks ago. Well, not a few months ago at Anfield, actually. No, Goodison, sorry. Goodison actually said, hey, Moisey. And I had to dig him out for it. Yeah.
Okay, we'll tread carefully. I want to say a big thanks to Steve as well, who's the landlord of the Taps, which is where we are today. We're in the pub. I mean, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. It could be 10 o'clock in the evening. So we're just checking that that's sparkling water and not anything else.
It certainly is. But I would expect most people from the Preston area to know the Taps really well.
What's your usual tipple? What are you going for?
Steve looks after me here. I'm not into all these fancy beers here. I'm just to have a beer, very quiet. I'm not a huge drinker.
How often's he in, Steve? All the time? Every day?
Frequently.
Frequently. Okay. Do you come in here to watch games and stuff?
I do. I come in now and again, and I'm in Lytham. My family live in Lytham at the moment, so it's we're home, and I come into the pub now and again. But you saying this might mean there's a lot of people starting to come in here now. It might be crowds in here or not.
Steve's nodding. He's happy.
No.
Have you lived in the area sort of since being a player for PNE all those
I've lived
years
in
ago?
Preston all my days, but when I first came to Preston, I always laugh with Derek Shaw, who was the old sort of chairman there, and he didn't put me in it, but I lived in Moornook. So all the people who know a lot about Preston, Moornook's not one of the finest areas we've got. And I stayed there for a few years with my wife, the kid, and then we eventually moved out towards Longrange, and then we had a few of the other places round about. So we're really fortunate. We stayed in a couple of farms. We rented sort of cottages at different times, because at that time we weren't earning a great deal of money, and we had to try and do the best we could.
You joined Preston towards the end of your playing career, but Mels, you did a bit of research, and actually there was a pre-season game, and you weren't too sure at the start whether Preston was going to be the right place
Preston
for you.
against Wigan.
Correct.
And you went on a friendly sort of game.
I went to watch. It was a pre-season friendly. And the reason I went to watch is because I wasn't sure about John Beck and what the stuff I'd read about John Beck and the way he played, etc. And actually, to be fair, Preston had tried to sign me just before, and I chose to go to Hamilton, which ended up not being a good decision at the time. And it was Glenn Burnell, who was the scout for Preston at the time, and done a lot of John's work. So I went down to watch the game. I says I'll sit in the stand and watch, see what it was like. Steve, is that your phone ringing, Steve, in here?
Already, they know you're here, see. People coming for a drink.
So yeah, and I thought, oh wow, and actually the ones who know, if you know Lee Ashcroft, you know, had came off and was subbed, and you know, spat at the manager on the way off, and I thought to myself, my goodness, I says, can't be right. They can't. No players do that, you know. So I was pretty taken aback by it. But anyway, for whatever reason, a few weeks later, I got myself down and joined.
In terms of where it started for you, did it feel like it was going to be the last club of your playing career, or was it? Did you have other thoughts?
A little bit, because I was a wee bit disappointed that I'd personally that I'd sort of petered out a little bit, and I hadn't got probably what I'd wanted. I had a great time at Dunfermline before and my contract had just run out at Dunfermline. We had a great time at Dunfermline.
What did you want then when you say you didn't get what you wanted?
Well, I was still hoping that I would play at a higher level. Right. Most of the time I had played at a pretty good level. But I was pleased to come to Preston. I really was at the time, because I'd gone back to Scotland at Dunfermline, then I'd moved to Hamilton, mainly because the manager was Ian Munro, who was my manager at Dunfermline, and it got on really well. But I got there right away, and I didn't play well for a month or so, and I says, I'll need to get out of here again. And to be fair, Glenn still wanted me, and Preston still wanted me, so it was able to happen, and I got myself a move to Preston.
When did that opinion of Preston for you change? You mentioned that you weren't too sure in that pre-season game, but then you eventually come to the club. So when did that begin to switch for you? Well,
I think it switched mainly because it was the right... I wanted to get away then, so at that time. So whether it was right or wrong, I didn't really know. Preston, we were in, was it the third or fourth division then at that time? So it was pretty low, and I was coming to play for a manager who obviously has had a bad reputation, maybe in some places still does, but and I sensed that when I was coming in, saying, what's this going to be like? But in many ways, I really enjoyed it. He was tough, he ran us to death, but it had some weird ideas. And all the players, I'm sure if you speak with any of the boys of that era, they'll all say the exact same thing.
Well, you arrived in '93 and Preston had just been relegated to Tier 4. So was there sort of a hope and expectation that would be bounced straight back sort of thing? A
little bit. I think that the expectation at Preston was that it would happen. And you got to remember, we still had the old ground then. We didn't have the new stadium or anything at that time. So and we were AstroTurf, so that was another thing I was having to get used to as well. We were playing in AstroTurf, which, John had some unbelievable ideas of the AstroTurf. And
you played on AstroTurf before. You must have obviously when you've been there at Preston.
Yeah. And there used to be QPR as well.
Everyone says Deepdale was the best one of the bunch, though.
I don't know, but like things like John wanted us to wear. Would want us all the players to wear tracky bottoms. Yeah. And he was a bit in.
Did you?
Yeah, we all had to. We had to, and actually for the way he wanted, he wanted you. He didn't want MD missing tackles. Didn't want MD, and in a strange way, it had no real effect. It didn't have any effect on the players. It was more like, it wasn't really tracksuit bottoms. It was more like tights underneath your shorts, sort of thing. So we were all fine with it. It was a lot of the bits that John implemented, which were incredibly good, but in the same time, also very annoying as well at times for the players. And
I want to test your memory.
Yeah.
Right. Debut for Preston North End, 29th of September 1993. Who were the opponents that day?
You are testing me now.
First game for North End.
First game for North End.
It was away. 2-2.
Grimsby.
Oh, Mansfield,
there we go.
And
close.
Your Deepdale debut was game 3 for North End, 19th of October 1993, EFL Trophy. Who were the opponents? Deepdale debut. It's funny because players don't remember these sort of landmarks. You won 2-1.
I'm guessing again, Carlisle.
Against a big rival, Burnley.
Was it?
Burnley over.
Yeah.
You remember these games?
No, don't remember those games. Not there. I can remember loads of games, but not those games. I've had I don't know how many games I've had since then, so... whether it be football or playing or management, hundreds and hundreds.
Yeah. In terms of your North End playing days, how much did you feel like a leader in the dressing room, especially off the back of some disappointments and then building on that to go and have success with the group of players that you were sharing that dressing room with?
I think I was always probably a bit of a leader anyway. I've been captain of most of the teams I've been involved with, so I think that was I probably had that when I came down, and. By the time I was probably 30ish around that time, I was probably getting to a time where people were looking up for leadership, and younger players were there as well. So I probably was always the leader and always a bit of a captain at the time as well. We had other people who came in, Bryce and different people who came in at different periods, and one or two others who were with us as well. But we were probably the main ones around that period.
Did you feel like that was just a natural thing for you? Because I read that you did your coaching badges actually really early in your career. Mm-hmm. Was that something that you made a conscious decision to do, and you felt like you wanted to be a leader amongst the lads?
Well, when I was a young player at Celtic, it was disappointing that I didn't. I wanted to be a top player and wasn't quite able to do that. So I went and done my coaching badges to try and make me a better player. That's what I'd done them for.
It says you were 22 when you took your
coaching
badges.
I became fully qualified when I was 22. I'd qualified, done all my courses and whatnot by that time.
So you're already thinking about managing?
No, I wasn't thinking about managing. I was doing it to try and make myself a better player and hope that I would have more knowledge and understanding of the game. But I loved talking about football. I love being around football people. It was a great. And if you look at the Scottish managers of the period and what was just there, Largs was our base, just like England have got St George's Park now. Largs was our base, and Largs was an unbelievable place. But the biggest compliment I could give the things was the managers. So, for example, Sir Alex, but more like Walter Smith, people who a lot of people would maybe know, Jockey Scott, Gordon Wallace. There was a group of Craig Brown. People who would give up their time in the summer to come and actually help the coaches. They had a great time as well, because they had a great nights out. But the coaching was great. People like Jose Mourinho went to Largs as well around that time as well. Mm. So Scotland had a great reputation for their coaching courses, and I still believe do have. So I became qualified there. But the next part of it was I actually then went and redone the whole thing again in England and made sure that I'd done it in England as well. So I actually done my coaching badges twice.
We've spoken to Ian Bryson on this podcast. We've spoken to Ryan Kidd as well. Who were some of the other leaders in the dressing room at that time in the early 90s?
Well, we had... Who did we have? Like Paul Rayner was there. He was a character for us at the time. Then we had, right at the start, Tony Ellis. Was a really good goal scorer for us.
31 goals he got in your first season.
Yeah, Tony Ellis was incredible, really was. But I have to say, people wouldn't say it. John Beck was, if you were a centre forward, you'd have loved it. John Beck made the boys cross the ball in the box, could only put it to the back post. He would sub you if you didn't go on the outside and put crosses in. So if you're a centre forward, it was an absolute dream ticket, because you were saying, that boys have got to get the ball in the box, that's it. So it was always going to get you goals. But Tony was a good player as well. And then there was people like Mick Conroy. There was other people who'd come in who had a bit more experience around some other clubs. But I think really around that time, my memory would get me. It was probably Bryce was probably the one when Bryce came in, and I think Bryce was just after me. Bryce came in a little bit after me, but we had just started to rebuild and starting to get it right. I mean, for the Preston North End supporters, who I'm sure will all be listening, will remember, John went out and made the second team, the reserve games, big nights at the stadium, because we could have it. And he used to go around to schools, and he used to give all the schools tickets, kids the tickets for the games. And it was a great idea, and it was like getting more people coming to the reserve games.
That's one thing that has been consistent. Every guest we've had on the podcast that's spoken about John Beck has said that he did bring better attendances to Deepdale.
Absolutely. Got things going. And I'll be thankful they, whether it be John or whether it would be Gary, they had sort of built a momentum which I was able to join on. And I think momentum in football can take you a long way, which it did even with us at Preston.
You came close that first season.
Yeah.
Getting beat in the playoff.
We did.
Finally against Wickham.
Off Wickham.
What a goal from Bryson, by the way.
I'm saying, did we not have a year before we lost to Gillingham in the playoffs, in the semis, maybe even before that?
So you arrived after Preston got relegated to Tier 4, and that first season you were there, that was the last season of the plastic pitch, the Torquay game and everything like that, and then getting beat to Wickham in the final 4-2. That was your first season. The next season was playoffs again.
And that was the one we lost to Gillingham that year, was it? We lost in the semi.
Bury lost us to Bury.
We've done that. But the thing we're talking about it, and that's why they can get them mixed up. I can remember, obviously, I remember the Wickham game greatly.
The Torquay game as well. A lot of people have said that was one of their most emotional days.
Torquay game
playing
was
for the club.
unbelievable. Yeah, we I don't know if I can tell it on there. We had some great stories, you know. From that, we had lost 2-0, I think, down at Torquay. I think it was 2-0 or 2-1, and 2-0. And actually, John Beck, who was had different ways of doing it. Remember, we went and we stayed in Southport for the game, but he didn't come. And he sort of left me in charge to say, just look after him. So we turned up at the dressing room, and we didn't know what was going on. And he actually says, I booked my holidays for the next 2 days. So suggesting that we weren't going to get through. So there was quite a few of us, sort of were going for him, and but he didn't. He went outside and he sat on the bench, and the players were in there, and the players got it sorted. So his type of motivation at the time was good. And I scored that night. It was a few, and we won 3-0 in the night, I think it was, and got us to the final. So it was a really big night because it was the last night of the AstroTurf as well, as you rightly said.
Yeah, people ripping bits up of the old pitch and taking it home with them.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you get any?
No.
I have to ask that.
Yeah.
Following season, obviously, great success with the club. But at the start of that campaign, a young David Beckham arrives at Deepdale in 1995. What was that like? What was he like?
By this time we've changed the manager, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Gary's become the manager. I was with Gary recently, and I remember Gary saying to me, he says, we're coming down to watch a game, and I was talking to him about it the other day there, and he says, we're going to watch a player, and he was playing it was Manchester United against Aston Villa. It was getting played at Walsall, and so Gary was telling me that I didn't know who it was we were going to watch. My memory was it was there because, and obviously it was Beck's we were watching, and and actually I came away and I was centre half, and Bryce was captain. I think I was centre half, but assistant manager now to Gary, and I came away saying, don't think he's good enough. Don't think he's strong enough. No, looks a bit skinny and looks a bit that, No, and Gary, to be fair, and that's what happens in football. You've got to be honest. Quite often, everybody says something and then they don't back up with it. I thought at the time he wouldn't be enough, and then Gary said, "No, we're taking him," and we had him in, and he was unbelievable for us. He was only there for a month or so, but the biggest thing about that was Bex then obviously came in, scored from a corner in one of the games, and he was renowned for his set dead ball situations, and so he was involved in that. But he went back to Man United after the month and went straight into the team. And the biggest compliment I would give David Beckham at that time was his family. We won the league at Orient that season. At the end of the season, we won. We got promoted at Orient, and Bex and his dad were in the dressing room after the game with us. So it was it was really big that he didn't forget that little bit of where he
Neil
started.
Mellor scored. Preston take the lead, and that's exactly what it means to Neil Mellor to score in the West Lancashire derby.